श्री परमात्मने नमः। नारायणं नमस्कृत्य नरं चैव नरोत्तमं देवीं सरस्वतीं व्यासं ततो जयमुदीरयेत्। श्रीमद्भगवद्गीता साधका संजीवनी 8th chapter Attaining the Supreme, verses 8 to 16. Description of worship of God who is with attributes and formless, attributeless and formless, and with attributes and form with fruit. Remembrance, thinking. Born of practice mentioned in the verse 7 is described in the next verse. Verse 8. Abhyasa yoga yuktena chetsa nanyāgamina paramam purusham devyam yati parthanuchintyan. O Partha, he who with his mind established in yoga in the form of practice of meditation, thinking of nothing else, is constantly engaged in contemplation of the Supreme Divine Purusha, God, attains Him. Comment. Practice means repeated concentration of the mind on God by diverting it from the world, while yoga means equanimity. Equanimity is called yoga. The concentration of the mind results in joy, while its diversion results in sadness. This is called practice rather than the yoga of practice. It is called yoga of practice only when there is equanimity in joy and sorrow. A striver, instead of attaching importance to joy and sadness, should attach importance to his goal. This is establishment of mind in yoga. Now, for concentration, the Lord describes God who is formless and is endowed with attributes. Verse 9. Kavim Puranam Anushasitaram Anur Anyasam Anusamredyaha Sarvasya Dhataram Achintya Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamsaha Parastat. He who contemplates on the omniscient, the ancient, the ruler, minuter than an atom, sustainer of all, of form inconceivable, shining like the sun and beyond all darkness of ignorance. Comment. The Lord is omniscient because He knows all the beings and their good and evil actions. He is the most ancient because He is the origin of everything sentient and insentient. He is the ruler and illuminator of all the senses, mind, intellect and ego. Secondly, He through the scriptures, preceptors and saints orders men to perform their duties, and by creating favorable and unfavorable circumstances according to their virtuous and evil actions, purifies them. He is called the ruler as He makes the ordinance for prescription and prohibition and also destroys their old actions in the form of virtues and sins by enabling them to reap their fruits. The Lord is subtler than even an atom. He is the subtlest of the subtle. He is beyond the reach of mind and intellect. Even nature can't be perceived by them because they are the evolutes of nature. So, how can they have an access to the subtlest Lord? He is the supporter and sustainer of infinite universes. So, He is called the sustainer of all. He is supremely above and beyond the darkness of ignorance. He is rather the illuminator of ignorance. His color is like the sun, that is, just like the shining sun. The Lord is the illuminator of minds and intellects of all beings. All beings receive light from Him. His form is inconceivable to the mind and intellect. It means that one should contemplate on God. God knows all the beings and so He remembers them. Therefore, they should also remember Him. Now a doubt arises how to think of him when he is inconceivable. The clarification is that the firm belief that he is inconceivable is in fact the thought of him. Now, in the next verse, Lord Krishna explains how a devotee, according to the thought which he has at the time of death, reaches him. Verse 10. Paryana kale mansa chalena bhaktaya yukto yoga balena cheva bhruvor madhye pranam आवेश्य सम्यक सातम परम पुरुषम uppeti divyam. By yogic power firmly holding the life breath in the space between the two eyebrows at the time of death, contemplating on God with a steadfast mind, full of devotion, he reaches the supreme divine Purusha, God. Comment. There is the description of the worship of the Lord who is formless and is endowed with attributes. There is need for practice in this sort of worship. This practice is not meant for attaining accomplishments, siddhi, but for God realization. This concentration of mind on God at the time of death is a tedious task which can be carried out only by one who has a full command over his life, breath and mind. A striver should first have a determination that beyond ignorance there is an unaltered one who is the illuminator, base and inspirer of all the beings. Then he should love him from his heart. By doing so, his mind will be concentrated on him naturally. In the next verse, Lord Krishna explains the order how to attain the Lord who is formless and attributeless. Verse 11. Yad aksharam veda vedo vadanti veshanti yad yattayo vittaragaha yad icchanto brahmacharyam charanti tat te padam sangrehina pravakshyaye. I shall speak to you in brief that goal which knowers of the Vedas term as the imperishable and into which enter recluses, self-controlled and free from attachment and desiring which strivers practice celibacy. Comment. That which the knowers of the Vedas term as the imperishable, attributeless, formless and that ever remains uniform and has been called the supreme imperishable Brahma is described here. I shall speak to you well in brief that essence which has been described in the scriptures, the supreme, the unique, the absolute and which is attained by worshippers. Lord Krishna in the next two verses explains the means to attain the attributeless, formless Lord at the time of death. Verses 12 and 13. सर्वाद्वाराणि संयम्य मनोहृदि निरुद्धया च मूर्धनि आधायात्मनः प्राणम् आस्थितो योगाधारणाम् ओम इत्येकाक्षरम् ब्रह्मा विहारन् माम् अनुस्मरन् याः परयाति त्यजन् देहम् सा याति परमां गतिम्. Having restrained all the media of perception, fixing the mind in the heart and the life breath in the head, remaining steadfast in yogic concentration, uttering the one-syllabled Brahma, Om, thinking of me, he who departs leaving the body attains the supreme state. Comment. At the time of death, one should restrain all the media of perception, that is, should close all the gates of the body. He should restrain his ears, skin, eyes, tongue and nose from the five senses of sound, touch, color, form, taste and smell, and five organs of action, tongue, hands, feet, anus and generative organ from speaking, taking, going, passing stool and urine. Thus, the senses will be restrained. The mind should be fixed in the heart so that it may not hanker after sensual pleasures. He should fix his life breath in the head. That is, by controlling his life breath, he should fix it in Brahmarandhra, the suture on the top of the head. He should become steadfast in yogic concentration. That is, he should neither use his sense organs in performing actions nor think with his mind and have a full command over his life breath. After it, he should utter the one-syllabled Brahma, Om, with his mind and think of the supreme imperishable Brahma who is attributeless, formless. The thought about him is that he pervades everywhere, all the things, persons, incidents and circumstances, etc. at all times. He who thinking of the attributeless and formless Lord departs leaving the body, that is, his life breath passes through the 10th door, attains the supreme goal, namely the attributeless and formless Lord. Lord Krishna in the next verse explains the easy method to attain the Lord who is endowed with attributes and form. Verse 14. Ananya chetah sattatam yo mam smarati nityashaha tasyaham sulbhaha partha nitya yuktasya yoginaha. O Partha, the yogi who constantly thinks of me with undivided mind, always absorbed in me, I am easily attainable. Comment. The striver whose mind is not attracted in the least towards prosperity and pleasures and remains absorbed in God and who does not depend on anyone besides the Lord is of undivided mind. He depends only on God like a chaste wife who totally depends on her husband and thinks of him only, and like an obedient disciple or son who depends on his preceptor or parents only. Such a striver worships the Lord endowed with attributes such as Rama, Krishna, Shiva, Durga, Ganesha, Surya, Sun God. He, without thinking of the other forms of the Lord as different from his own, worships his favorite deity with exclusive devotion. He has a firm belief that he is only God's and only God is his. He is of none else and none else is his. Satatam means constantly, from the time he is awake to the time he gets to sleep. Nityashaha means always, that is, he thinks of him from the day he knew him to the day he dies. I am easily attainable to such a devotee who is absorbed in me. Absorbed in me doesn't mean that his mind constantly dwells on me, but it means that he is devoted to me in a detached spirit with full faith and love. For instance, a Brahmana by caste always remembers that he is a Brahmana, not a Kshatriya or a Vaishya. He remains a Brahmana whether he thinks of it or not. Similarly, a devotee has a firm belief that he is only mine and only I am his. He who maintains this affinity is called absorbed in me. His senses, body, mind, intellect, etc. are not his. If he accepts his body and mind, etc., his own, I can't be easily attainable to him. The fact is that we have identity with the Lord, not with the world. Our identity with the world is impossible, but by an error, we identify ourselves with bodies and think that the Lord is separate from us. The result is that we have to follow the cycle of birth and death. But if we realize the reality, the Lord can be easily attainable to us. In the next two verses, Lord Krishna explains the merit of his realization. Verse 15. Mam upetya punarjanma dukhalyam ashashvatam napnuvanti mahatmanaha sansiddhim paramam gataha. Having attained me, the great souls are no more subject to rebirth, which is transitory, and the abode of pain, for they have reached the highest perfection. Comment. When a man is reborn, he has to suffer so much of pain as a man whose skin is stripped of dust. But at the time he is unable to express his pain, he simply weeps. When he grows, he feels very sad as his desires are not satisfied. When he fails in the examination, he is so much dejected that he thinks even to commit suicide. In youth, he feels afflicted on not being married according to his wish. On being married, he feels sad, not finding the spouse of his choice. When girls attain puberty, parents are obsessed with anxiety for not being able to arrange their marriage. Similarly, he feels much perturbed during his married life when he finds himself unable to rear the members of his family with the limited resources. In old age, besides suffering from diseases, he has to bear insult. He develops cough and can't sleep properly. At the time of death also, he has to suffer a lot of pain. Thus, there is no end of pains for him. Just like men, animals and birds, etc., have also to suffer a lot of pain in cold, hot, and rainy seasons. The bigger animals kill the young ones of the smaller animals. Thus, they are very sad. In this way, creatures have to suffer in hells and 84 lakh forms of lives. Therefore, rebirth has been called the abode of pain. Rebirth is called transitory because in the bodies there is a continuous change. No body is permanent. It dies. The great souls are no more subject to rebirth because they have reached the highest perfection. As a greedy person desires to get more and more money, a devotee, by recognizing the Lord whose portion he is, aspires to get more and more love, and then he attains fathomless and limitless love, which enhances every moment. This love is the perfection of devotion. There is no perfection beyond it. Verse 16. Abrahma bhuvanala lokaha punar avrittino arjuna mam upetya tu kantya punarjanmana vidyate. All worlds from the abode of Brahma downwards are subject to return, O Arjuna. But, O son of Kunti, on attaining me, there is no rebirth. Comment. The highest plane of existence is said to be the abode of Brahma. In this mortal world of ours, the king who possesses a prosperous kingdom, a young healthy body, no enemy, and obedient and sincere family and servants is regarded as completely happy. The mortal gods who as a fruit of their virtuous actions obtain the abode of gods and after enjoying that fruit again come back to the mortal world. They are 100 times happier than the kings. The permanent gods, Ajana Devta, who at the beginning of the universe were gods and continue to be gods till the end of the universe, are 100 times happier than the mortal gods. Indra, the ruler of the gods, is regarded as 100 times happier than the permanent gods. The abode of Brahma is supposed to possess 100 times more happiness than Indra, and the bliss of a liberated soul is regarded as 100 times more than that of the abode of Brahma. It means that from the highest region of Brahma to the mortal world of the earth, happiness is limited, changing and perishable, but the bliss of God realization is limitless, fathomless, and permanent. An important fact: the soul is an eternal portion of the Lord, and after reaching the Lord's supreme abode, it has not to return. Then why does it return? As a man goes to listen to the divine discourse, he comes to his house after listening to it. But if he forgets anything there, he has to go back again to take it. Similarly, if this soul gets attached to wealth, property, and family, etc., it has to come back. The body dies, so it has to occupy place in any other body of a man or an animal or a bird, etc. The Lord declares in the Gita attachment to the three qualities, modes, born of nature is the cause of his birth in good and evil wombs. It means that he who has desire and attachment for the world will have to come back. All the worlds from the abode of Brahma downwards are subject to rebirth. But on attaining me, there is no rebirth. The soul has not to come back because, being a portion of the Lord, it reaches Him, and the supreme abode of the Lord is its real home. Its real home is not the abode of Brahma, etc. And so, it has to come back from there. As a man can board a bus or a train only up to the station for which he has got the ticket, and then he has to get off. Similarly, a man has to come back after enjoying the fruit of his virtuous actions in the worlds of the gods. But if he is in his own house, he has not to leave it. A man can't attain salvation even after reaching the highest plane of existence. So a striver should never aspire to enjoy the pleasures of the higher worlds. All the worlds, including that of Brahma, lead the man to bondage because of the demoniacal propensities. While if the man takes refuge in God, he is liberated from the bondage because then he possesses the divine virtues only. There are two kinds of persons who go to the abode of Brahma. Those who perform virtuous deeds in order to enjoy the pleasures of the abode of Brahma, and those whose aim is to attain God, but at the time of death, because of having a desire for pleasure, deviate from spiritual discipline, and so they have to go to the world of Brahma. The latter at the final annihilation are liberated with Brahma after enjoying the pleasures there. This sort of liberation is called Krama Mukti, chain liberation or chain salvation, when Brahma, after his span of life, vacates the place for the succeeding Brahma. But the strivers who realize the Lord here, their salvation is called Sadhya Mukti, quick salvation. Om Tat Sat. All glories to Sri Partha Sarthi, Lord Shri Krishna. All glories to Bhagvadvani, Srimadbhagvadgeeta. Sri Hari Arpanamastu.